Oh,
We get logged in.
Oh, crap. Gosh, that went fast.
It did go fast. 1 second. Okay.
No.
Here we go. It's 7 o'clock. I call to order the November 24th, 2025 Board of Education meeting. And everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call.
Katie Casey. Here. Joel Johnson. Natalie Melfield. Here. Joseph Quinn.
Here.
Tom Schwartz.
Here.
Mary Schufeld. Here. Ollie Stansberry.
Here.
Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Motion? Second.
Casey.
Yes.
Stansberry.
Yes.
Schufeld.
Yes.
Schwartz.
Yes.
Melfield.
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes. That moves on to public input. I don't see any. Could we address the big blue cards in front of me?
Oh, those are from Richmond Grade School.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, normally this would be when we recognize too, so I might as well point these out. So these are from Richmond.
Grade School. That was for, Board Appreciation Day.
Oh my gosh, look at all that.
Wow.
Well, this is cool. We're all gonna go through here later and try to look for a kid's signature. Yeah, this is fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I feel well. All right. That moves us on to reports. And we'll go down the list here. I'll pause to see if anybody has any questions on the reports that have been presented, starting with report 5.1, revenue expenditure report. Okay, 5.2, fund balance comparison report. 5.3, special education revenue expenditure report. Okay, 5.4, the impressed report. 5.5, transportation report. And that moves us on to 5.6, administrative reports. And Dr. Lynn, your report first.
Yeah, good to see everybody here tonight. Thanksgiving coming up, Monday is always a different night. Sometimes I have to remind myself this time each year it's Monday, not Wednesday, so.
I didn't know it.
But we all made it.
Yesterday.
Yeah. A couple things. We're going to talk about the special ed review later in the meeting, so I'll get into more detail there. We continue to do significant work with our life safety, and we're going to talk about that as we get the building and grounds. To date, with the life safety as well as other repairs and things we've done over the years, we've been able to spend $3 million on improving our schools from an infrastructure standpoint, which is, I think, something to be really proud of. And has taken us a long way from roofs to windows to, HVAC and those things. We have a long ways to go, but we're making good headway. The other thing I wanted to mention tonight is when I was at the conference, I got a chance to talk to a couple of the bus companies. Midwest is the one that we predominantly have used in the past. They still tend to be coming in with the best prices and the best service. But there's a significant increase, and I've brought this up in the past. And so we see the price going from our lease each year from mid 600s to upper 900s in transportation costs. And this is happening across the board. Although 157 is the one that signs the lease, obviously that cost comes back to District 2 in mileage and the cost of it. So I've talked with Tom a little bit, and I'd like to get together with another board member from D2 along with the Transportation Committee at Richmond Burton and kind of sit down in early January and have a discussion over our fleet. I think we can cut anywhere from three minimum up to maybe 6 or 7 buses. And we're gonna kind of look for some expertise on how to maybe do routes a little different. And we talked about that a little bit too. So will we be able to save, make up that $300,000 in the cost? No, but we would like to be as efficient as we can. So if anybody else would like to join Tom and you have an interest in that, Probably early January, we'll get together and let me know or let Tom know, and I'll set something up, and we'll meet with RV on that. That is the main report for today.
Any questions? Any immediate takers? I'm just kidding, you don't have to do that.
I will though. No one else wants to.
All right. Very good, thank you for that. Moving us on to Dr. Enright in the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Report.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. Just a few updates for us for the 90-10 evaluation for the NMS grading policy. We've been working on creating surveys for students, parents, and staff. Those will go out over the next 1 to 7 days. So we start gathering information from those groups on 90-10 and what their thoughts are on it and what their understanding is of it on it. So that'll be interesting to see. Staff survey for, we will also work on staff surveys for standard-based report cards. We're going to meet with, those will go out the teachers first, then parents sometime in the spring. So we're going to meet again with that team on January 22nd. The literacy team, I shared last time, we reviewed 4 different programs. We're going to meet on December 1st to go over all the programs and see what recommendation, if any, we want to go with. And the numeracy team met, we reviewed the current standards that the teams have created just to make sure there's an alignment with IAR and from grade level to grade level. So we have 1 meeting, we'll meet again on December 2nd to finish that review and hopefully have that back in the hands of the teachers for their review. I just want to thank all the team members from the report card team, the literacy team, and numeracy team that are listed on there for all their work and participation. Can I answer any questions, please?
Any questions? Dr. Enright. So we have the curriculum committee coming up again in December.
December 17th. Yep.
December 17th. And we'll have a bit more information on 90-10, I think. Very good.
Yeah, I finished talking to all the other school districts that actually responded to the spring survey I sent out. And so I uploaded those into our notes, so those are, you can review those at some time before the committee meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I would say that moves us on to either Spring Grove, Nippersink, or RGS principals for their reports. I'm pretty sure they're in the middle of parent-teacher conferences right now. So that moves us on to FOIA requests. Do we have any FOIA requests?
Nope.
Very good. Do we have any old business?
No old business.
That moves us on to new business. And new business starts at 7-1, the 2025 levy discussion and approving the resolution.
Yeah, so tonight, we basically approved what are we going to do, and it's the 4.9%. We always, what we call balloon levy, it's at 2.9%. But our EAV goes up and down, so if things go up and down, you know, the balloon levy allows us to capture that extra that may not be right now. So we say 4.9%, it's not going to be 4.9%. It'll be lower. And again, I always stress that this is our only revenue, basically. We do get some federal, we do get some other funding from the state, but about 85% of our revenue comes from this, and so always an important thing to take each year. Denise, did you have anything?
Sure, so about 4 weeks ago, we went ahead and the estimated EAV for the county was 568 million. It is now up to 581 million. So as your EAV goes up, your tax rate goes down. The last time this was looked at was on October 22nd. I haven't looked at it yet, and I won't look at it until next month when we do this. But that EAV will continue to move through the spring. That's the reason why we do the balloon levy, because we're not 1,000% sure what that EAV will land on in the spring. So you either get the 5% or just under the 5% or 2.9%, whichever is higher. So we are allowed to go up to the 4 point, I think I've got it at 4.95. So the gray box is what your levy was last year. The blue box is you take your levy times your extension times your EAV in the middle, and it looks like with the new numbers we'll get about $457,000. That green box is just me doing some adjustments for fund balances. 2-3 years ago, we started spending down Fund 50, which is your municipal retirement fund and Social Security fund. We need to adjust that up this year, so that it'll start up, this should be the last adjustment we make, so that it'll start being a flush fund.
558,000 in new funds. Correct?
457.
457,000
Yeah.
in new funds, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on that EAV, again, the
Yeah.
EAV
It
isn't
can
finalized till spring, but unfortunately, we have to next month let them know, let the county know what we're requesting, based on the information we have at that time. And then they'll run those numbers, in the spring for the final.
EAV moves, but we've been talking about 4.95% or the lesser of the, I think 2.79 is what's in the box right now, whichever comes out higher.
Yeah, so the 2.9 is your December CPI of December of 2024. That CPI never moves in this calculation.
Yeah.
The 4.95 will move up and down. So if you go under CPI, or you could flat levy it, which I do not recommend. But the 4.95 gets us as close to the 5% that we are allowed.
Yeah.
So if that 2.9, I'm sorry, not the 2.9 never moves. So if the EAV ends up being over $600 million, it'll push that $457,000 up to some unknown 475,000 about, so yeah.
Okay.
So that 2.79 is actually your tax rate.
Your tax rate, yeah.
And last year it was 3.121900, but because EAV went up so high, because last year your EAV was 532,000. This year it's right now, as of 10/22, it's 581 million. So then your tax rate would be the 2.792876.
Any questions?
So for the, the tax novice, these two numbers, CPI and the levy at 4.95, just so I understand, it's 5% or CPI, whatever's highest, that's your maximum levy,
Correct.
right? So with the CPI being lower, 5%'s the max.
Correct.
And
Well,
so
you can go over the 5%, but then you have to hold a hearing, do a black box in the newspaper and stuff, but just at a regular board meeting, we are allowed to go up to just the 5%. That's why you'll see us be like 4.9, 4.95.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure my understanding was correct.
You'll see school districts around McHenry County push that, we're at 4.95% up to 10%, but they're going to the newspaper, they're holding hearings to let their.
There's additional process that you
There's
have
a lot
to
of
do.
other processes, but this, we are entitled to up to the 5% with just at a regular board.
It's not gonna come close to that this year.
No, it's
So,
not.
And then so historically, when we saw the high inflation, that pushed that CPI way up, did we, and so then we went
Yeah,
over
so there
5%
was-
in those previous years?
There was 1 year in the past 5 years that we did do the black box on it, and, I think it was 8.1%, I think.
Okay, so you had to do the process even though CPI was high.
right. So had you not done the black box, the max you could have gotten was at 5%.
Gotcha, so 5% no matter what, you go over that, you have to do that black
Right.
box and the additional process.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? We need a motion to approve the resolution to prepare the 2025 tax levy as submitted.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Schwartz,
Yes.
Shufelt,
yes.
Casey,
Yes.
Melfeld,
Yes.
Stansberry,
Yes.
Quinn.
Yes. Motion passes. That moves us on to 7.2, special education review.
Yeah, so we had a very good, I think, consultants that came in. They spent 3 days in all our schools. They met with teachers, they met with some parents, they met with people across the spectrum of education. And the one thing that was really nice that came out of it is the feedback was that they were walking into rooms and they were seeing outstanding instruction. And that meant a lot. We know that things are happening the right way. They do have some things that we're working on right now. They're gathering the rest of the data. We looked at minutes that are being, given to children, how IEPs are written, as well as some, administrative structural things that we're looking at. We're gonna have to review and probably make some changes, but what we're gonna do is wait for their complete audit review to come back to us. And then we'll be able to review it and have those discussions, and then I'll bring forward a set of recommendations that I think will make us a little bit more efficient and, most importantly, improve maybe what we provide students in the classroom and out of the classroom. So it went really well. And I want to thank Denise and her team. They spent a lot of time organizing the different schools they were going to go to, the classrooms, and everybody they were going to meet with. It was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
They've gotten every piece of data that they could. And so I'm looking forward to the final report so we can kind of review that and have some discussions.
Great. Any questions for Dr. Lynn?
Will they come back after the changes are in place to see the effect?
They could, it would be another, like, you know, outside of what we're doing now, they do that. One of the things that I've talked to them about is, you know, making sure that we have some concrete steps that we could take for improvements, for efficiency. So we're not reading something and trying to grab inference from it, like, well, what would be best? And then we certainly could, after we make these changes and a year goes by or 2 years, it may not be a bad idea to have them come back and review it and say, hey, things are going well here, but maybe we still need to improve here. So, yeah, we can always do that.
So we're thinking another month or so before we get the recommendations.
Yeah, it takes a while. You know, they were going through each person's minutes, how many people we had to deliver those minutes and different things like that. So I've been very impressed with it. I think probably beginning of the new year,
Okay.
we should have something.
Any other questions? None? All right, thanks. That moves us on to 7.3, the Health, Life, Safety Report and Cost Update.
So we have spent a lot of time on health, life, safety, which is great because we need to spend a lot of time on that. If you remember last year, we did the 10-year life safety report, and then we've kind of been breaking that down. We've been working on many of the smaller things that we had to get done, and then we are looking now at what do we have to do to take our buildings and bring them up to where we need them to be for the next 25 years. You know, boilers, roofs, pavement, those types of things, as well as heaters in the classroom, all those things you can think of, piping, and they're very expensive. So we're looking at one way of going about it is through issuing life safety bonds. Allison has been working with us. You have 2 documents that I've shared with you. The first one was the improvement summary that you should have, and I'm gonna let Allison talk about that a little bit, as well as our team members, and they can add where they want. Our focus right now, just to let you know, is on priority 1 and 2. Those are the things we just have to fix, no matter what. The 3s and the 4s get to be a little bit more where we'd like to fix that, but you know, if that's not fixed, it's not gonna cause us to cancel school because the boiler broke. So I will turn it over to whoever would like to talk about this.
So the document that you have, I forget when I was in here and we had updated the facility assessment and been working with the Buildings and Grounds Committee to make sure we were in agreement and in alignment with what was being called out as priority 1s and 2s. So we did that exercise, and then we met again to review that list and talk more about items on that list that would be health, life, safety eligible. The process for health and life safety does allow some things that we might not have necessarily incorporated in the initial health, life, safety survey that we did last year. And so we've gone through, and so the columns that you have that are highlighted in orange, those are taking those facility assessment items, priority 1 and 2, and breaking out what I think would be accepted. This is all pending state review, obviously. what would likely be eligible for those health, life, safety. So from each category at each building, you'll kind of see how those totals go across. There is some things that don't necessarily fit into those categories, and that would just be something that, you know, you work on through different means to ultimately still accomplish those priority 1s and 2s. But a lot of the things that fall into this category, as Dr. Lynn was mentioning, you know, it's focused on your infrastructure, making sure you've got appropriate infrastructure to keep your buildings warm, safe, and dry. So things like unit ventilator replacements, roof replacements, exterior tuck pointing, interior conditions that are, you know, extremely worn just because of age and use, which is obviously something that happens over time. All of those things are and have been accepted by the state in their review process for health and life safety. Because certainly if, you know, our floors are in a bad condition, it potentially creates a hazard for tripping or slipping or something like that. So it's along those lines. Similarly, as we reviewed in some extent when we were doing the initial survey, there are also the priority C items that are typically related to, you know, maybe accessibility, security, paving, so some of those things that are maybe, you know, paving outside the building, but still, again, as people are coming and going from your buildings, something that wants to be kept in good condition and brought up to good condition if it hasn't worn to the point that it's not. So we've broken this out just to show, again, this is my initial review and assessment of what I think would be appropriate to submit and let the state obviously go through their process to ultimately approve or not, assuming the board wants to go that direction.
Allison, thank you. And, I mean, really, we like to look at the, you know, like you said, priority 1s and 2s. Those are the critical things that could, you know, affect school operations. You get into priority 3s, now we're talking about, hey, these are good things for energy conservation, you know, replacing original windows, things like that. More so efficiency type things. So really, like I say, those 1 and 2 items, they're directly related to safety and critical building systems that keep us in school. And I think it's great that the opportunity with the health, life, safety bonding, we can address that 90% of that with that type of funding. So really appreciate your legwork on that to find what projects would, you know, fit into that eligibility.
Yeah, if you look at the majority of the money that you're looking at life safety is at the middle school, and I don't think that surprises anybody. You know, your building's over 75 years old, original piping, original heaters in some classrooms and those types of things. When we look at a project of this scale, the middle school will be a project that probably goes consistent for 2 years, where a lot of times we do things in the summer. We would have to have students moved out of maybe an area while we're working in there to repipe and those types of things. So there's a lot of logistics that are gonna have to go into this. But after the middle school, you can see the rest of the money is spent in, you know, HVAC, roofing at the other schools, fire, life safety. But I think the total comes out to, what is it, around 23 million? Is that where we for priority 1 and 2?
That was for the entire.
The entire,
right.
yeah, so all 3 schools, you're looking around $23 million. I've shared with you as well, we went back and talked to Liz from the bonding company, and I think it's important to kind of get an idea of, well, what is, and I gave you an example of 15 million, let's say the state comes back and says, well, we're not going to approve everything, but we're gonna approve these things. So we threw a number out, 15 million, and then we said 21 million. And what would its impact be on a home that is a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 house? Just to try to get an idea of what does that do to property taxes. So you can kind of look at that. That is not what it's going to be for everybody, because we don't know either how much the state's going to allow us to do or not do. But I think when you look at that 23 million, I believe you're probably getting to where that's possibly a stopping point where You know, you have to balance what can you get done and really make significant improvement, because you don't wanna go and spend 8 million, but still have boiler problems, roof problems. You wanna get that taken care of. And I think that's why when we talked about the priority 1 and 2s made perfect sense. Because that does take care of the day-to-day big issues that we struggle with.
These are large ticket items that would otherwise be
Yeah.
hard to break up and do later. Like you say, you've got the critical need, right, we're past due. When you get into priority 3s and things like that, like we're talking like a lot of window replacement stuff, those are things that Chris can take and break up and use regular annual revenue to be able to take care of those things. I really think the 21 million would solve those big ticket items, like look at roofs. You know what I mean? You're not gonna be able to slice up a big roof section and reduce it down, right? Those things are critical.
Yeah.
Take care of those, and then you'll be able to experience some savings with this work, as well as, like you say, especially because of the reduction of reactive maintenance, reduction of preventive maintenance, and taking those funds to be able to roll that into these other priority projects. So I think addressing priority 1s and 2s with life safety funding will set us up to be able to take care of the other things.
Yeah, and I know we're replacing right now, we have we're already replacing windows in RGS, and what we can do for windows and other things like that, the money you will save from, you call it reactive maintenance, or, $100,000 I think we spent last year in boilers and heaters just at, NMS.
Yeah.
That's 100,000 now that goes back into the budget, that can go into other things that the school needs and kids needs and those types of things.
Can you remind me, what is our deadline for the priority 1 and 2 items? What is our timeline?
I believe we've gotten our A's done, correct? All the A's on
On the fire safety side.
the fire safety side, we're
and the
done.
immediate side,
Yeah, so we've met that.
Okay.
These now are, hey,
3 years, 5 years?
yeah,
Okay.
these are the things
We
we,
submit it as an amendment, which is what we would do. Majority of what we've identified as priority 1s and 2s are gonna fall into that B category, which is typically a 5-year window. There are a few items that, again, because of the size of the investment that would be necessary, we identified as a priority 1 or 2, because it wouldn't be something you could then just like systematically take on. Like windows, you can do a couple each year and manage it. There are a few things that would fall into that C category, which does have a little bit of a longer timeframe.
And that clock began, and that report was given to us.
That clock would begin when the amendment is filed.
Gotcha.
So for anything that isn't already on that list, which is what we're talking about here,
Yeah,
that would start once the state approves
got it.
the amendment.
yeah.
But we can't retroactively be reimbursed for all the wonderful work that you've done. Wishful thinking.
There's no expense to report to the state.
No, but the nice thing about that though is, it's that much less money that we have to bond for. The other thing is, if you look at NMS, we've really been strategic on the roofs we've taken. They've been the smaller ones.
Yeah.
You see this summer, we're getting into a little bit bigger, but, just like I have at the high school, we're now into $1 million roofs, and we just don't have that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I think a couple of things. One, it's nice to know those life, health, and safety bonds exist. Two, when you look at the spreadsheet and it shows how much the potential increase is per home on this, realize that the assessed value is gonna be very different, most likely very different than what maybe Zillow or an appraised value of your home is going to be. So it's important that when you're starting to think of this, if you really wanna drill down to what this might cost you on an annual basis, go to the assessor's site and look. For most folks, I think the assessed value is gonna be a bit less than what your appraised value is for the home, so. But even with those 5 years, some of these things, it's gonna, bonding, getting the funds, and then getting contracts out, and then getting the projects completed, gonna take up a lion's share of that 5 years anyway,
yeah.
so. Okay.
Dr. Lynn, I actually just had a question about the life safety bond. Does it work as far as a total dollar amount that we get, and then we're able to spend it within these categories that we've submitted? or is it item specific? So like if we start ripping up the roof and the roof is gonna cost more than what we submitted originally,
Yeah.
can we pull from the total bucket, or then are we responsible for the difference?
I believe you can pull, and I'm gonna let Allison this, you can pull for what it cost. So if we estimate that roof to be $1 million and we pull it up and you're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
$1,200,000, as long as the action of replacing that roof has been approved,
Okay,
then we can bond for that. We have a bonding limit,
right,
but we're not near that with this.
okay,
Because we also know there's going to be abatement with the asbestos, you know, in any older school, so, all those things are gonna come in. Now, ideally, we hope that, you know, some of the other projects, when we start talking like roofs or the paving or things like that, we can turn that over internally to, you know, Chris and save a little bit by having him manage it, as opposed to where when we talked about this, when you get to repiping an entire school and electrical, we will probably need to have some kind of project manager
yeah,
on site, like through an IHC or something like that, just to make sure all the
Right.
trades are getting there and getting things
right,
done the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's a lot to manage. You know, you talk about a project like NMS, very similar to, you know, work that I was part of in Johnsburg when we renovated like a 1967 junior high, very similar.
Yeah.
New unit ventilators and piping and, you know, you're dealing with, you know, finishes and walls, you know, I mean, you gotta get in, access to pipes and all those things, so to be able to, coordinate all that, I highly recommend, you know, utilizing a construction manager, and I think a lot of efficiencies come through that process too, like some of the things we talked about is maybe, you know, housing, you know, like the 8th grade at NMS, at the high school temporarily while work is being completed. Because anytime you can do work during non-premium summer hours, you save money. The labor in the summer is premium, so I think working with a construction manager will be able to generate savings for us and, you know, be able to, you know, stretch the dollar.
Yeah. And remember the piping, when we repipe, all the pipes that are there will stay, they just get abandoned. Because pulling them out and all that just causes bigger issues.
There's room up there.
Yeah, there's room, there's always room,
There's always room.
yeah.
But to your point, I mean, when you start doing abatement, you start tearing off pieces of the roof, you don't know what you're gonna find.
You don't,
So,
especially in a school that old, you don't know what's
Yeah.
behind the wall sometimes.
yeah.
a drain.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions?
Anything else, Allison, with that?
Just from a awareness, I would also say that the reverse is also important to understand. So if we do find some cost savings as we're going through this effort, then in a project that we estimated was gonna be $1 million and it comes in at 750, when everything is said and done, that 250 is now available to you that you can still spend on other health and life safety eligible items. So if, we get through the 20 million and we have some left,
Right.
or we see that coming, we can easily submit additional amendments and maybe start to take on some of those priority 3 things, or if something else has changed over the course of this, those dollars would be available that can be used for additional things. So it's not a use it or lose it kind of situation either.
And you guys went through and updated all the prices too, based on current.
Yeah, this was based on the work we had just gone through when we did the health life safety survey last year. We were doing the facility assessment at the same time, so these are all up to date numbers.
So we'll just, the timeline, we're gonna wait for Wold and Allison to do the itemization, do the application, and then it'll go to the ROE and then down to the state, and that'll take a couple months, but if this is a direction the board chooses to go, we could work it so work could begin in summer of 2027, so.
So in the meantime, if things start failing, but they're already in the amendments, how does that work?
Well, in that case, we just have to take our money and fix them at the time, yeah. If we have a catastrophic like boiler situation, the goal would be if we can, we try to get it up and, we have 4, and I think we always have 3 running. 4 is pretty unusual, but yeah, we just have to kind of take it, I guess, one
Fingers
incident at a time.
Yeah, repair until we
It's
can get
fingers
there.
crossed.
nice.
But it doesn't
orange
affect our application
I don't think it's
or
going away.
anything.
No, right.
flavor. No,
It doesn't
no,
affect the process.
it doesn't affect the process at
Okay.
all. No, there won't be any impact on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, great questions. Anything else? All right, thank you. That moves us on to the review of the 2025 Board of Education dates. I'm assuming this may be 2026? Okay. There's no approval that's needed for this. It's just kind of reviewing it. I looked at these earlier. The only one I would, and this came up last year and I think even the year before, but it's today's date, right? Because it always seems to be coinciding with parent-teacher conferences and things of that nature. So I'm fine moving forward with this as is, but like an asterisk around if we can solve for this Monday to allow for the
We did-
principals to be here.
We did talk about, we could do, we do Wednesday RV, we could have a Thursday D2. It may limit, just take a deep breath.
You mean as of last week?
It would-
Last week?
What's that?
Last week.
Last week?
Yeah,
But doesn't that,
it will limit the financials that you get for that month. Because
it's a
the,
lot with the conferences then too.
Yeah, doesn't it limit
The
kids?
Chicago
Yeah.
conferences, not
yeah,
the schools.
I'm okay with not doing that,
It would be more of a
I just-
Tuesday, Wednesday, rather
Tuesday,
than-
Wednesday.
That one might be a little bit better.
Because there were times we
That's
did
right.
Monday, Tuesday, or we did Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday would be better.
The Thursday would just be too much.
What about like the
Everybody.
Tuesday of Thanksgiving week? Because aren't the principals and all that only?
Yeah, I mean,
during
that's
parent-teacher
very
conferences?
possible,
That's tomorrow, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
today's their late day and tomorrow's an earlier day for them.
that's a possibility too. I know
I think past boards.
over the last 17 years, we've done it a lot of different ways, because it's hard to find one that kind of meets what you need.
There was one November where we had 5 Wednesdays, and I was able to push it past Thanksgiving rather
It's
than.
true, to have a Wednesday.
But there's no one there, that's not coming up anytime soon again.
We'll look at it and see what we can do.
Yeah.
And we'll run some ideas past, before we get to summer, and we can make some changes still.
I don't see any other conflicts otherwise. Okay, any questions on this?
I don't know if now is the time to bring it up, but a big theme that came up in the seminars that I went to was like goal setting for the board. And I was wondering if any of these dates are like designated as an opportunity for us to take a look at our progress towards our goals or realign our goals.
Yeah, good question. Typically what ends up happening is that we do the goal setting process on a different date than a board meeting. And I know that, gosh, because it was just, I mean, it's usually around this time of year that we end up having
Yeah,
somebody come in for a training session.
yeah.
And so probably not ideal for, December, but maybe we look at January. We try and reach out to IASB for some training dates.
They will probably, I'm just going on past, they'll probably be booked up into the spring.
Okay.
But as far as goals, if you're like the.
Yeah, our
the
goals,
Goals, we can do a goal. We haven't.
So what we've done typically is they come in and do a training on goal setting.
Yeah,
And they have us go through like this process of goal setting, if I'm remembering this correctly, and then we actually go through the goal setting process together as a group.
yeah, we could certainly do the goal process. We haven't in the last year or so because it's all been based on the buildings, really a lot of the stuff, but we certainly are at that point where we look at some new curricular goals, and different things like that, so, I could bring some dates back in January or December, as that might work.
Yeah, and it was never really one meeting either, I think we've always had like a couple of meetings to, we kind of define what we're looking at, and then we come back to a following meeting, and then we actually have the goals
Yeah.
sort of. Yeah, and then maybe we do the board member training through IASB as soon as they are allowed, or can come in and provide that training.
Yeah, we can check on
Thanks.
that. Yep.
Where
It is a
are we
good
at
question.
with, oh, I just have a question, sorry. Where are we at with the strategic planning process? So like in Johnsburg, I sit on the strategic planning team, which is the first year I've done that, and it's to set, goals for the next 5 years. And so it's kind of a new process for me, and I think it's something we're looking to do is, 5 years, and then we'll set it again for another 5 years. And it involves a lot of stakeholders and things like that. is that completed similarly in this district? So there's a
Yeah.
strategic plan that we're working off of, and then we do an annual goal setting kind of based on that?
Yeah, great question. It is all one and the same. I think I've been on the board since 2019, 2020. And we've had at least 3 or 4 of those sessions where we would take a look at what we have listed out there for 5 years. And then as a board, we take a couple of meetings to discuss which ones we've hit, which ones should stay on because we haven't hit them, or we replace them with something new. And so we've done that pretty much annually as a board. And so I suspect that that'll be what this next
Yes.
set of meetings will be about.
So we had a very complex set, and we decided, hey, let's give this 5 years.
Yep.
And so those goals we've been working on, we've accomplished quite a few of them. And then I think the last year and a half has really been focused on buildings and, things like that. So I think, again, going back, we have the training session, and then another goal setting, we can bring those back.
Yeah.
And then as a board, you can, well, we've done this, what about adding this? And
I think the timing is probably right. It's probably been 18 months.
Yeah, it's time.
Since we've actually had a chance to, go through those. I mean, we keep track of them, as a group, but we've probably achieved many of them and need to review many more to see what's feasible now for the next 5 years. So I think the timing is about right.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Good with the dates for now. That moves us on to 7.5, the first reading of press policy updates.
Yeah, take a look at these as a first reading. If you come across something that kind of catches your eye, you have questions about, let us know. Nothing out there right now that is drawing a lot of attention. Just a lot of legalese changes as well as a few other things. And I'll go through them a little bit more too, and if I see something, I'll send it out.
Okay. Any questions on that? We vote to approve in December.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we had a prelim last month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. If no questions, let's go on to updates from the IASB conference. I would just say that it was my first trip to the conference.
Mine too.
Yeah, I thought it was terrific. I'll just speak to the sessions that I was a part of, my key takeaways. I'll rely upon you for some feedback too. We happened to go into the same session in the morning, and that was about overcoming odds when it comes to bond referendums. Really great presentation by the group. This was Troy, I believe, right? Or, what was the group down there?
BBHS, I don't know.
BBHS. So, anyway, they had a scenario to where they needed some major updates to their high school. And they described the process that they went through, the surveys they conducted. And what was very interesting, because we had our own surveys too, is they didn't look at the surveys as a negative thing. They looked at the surveys, okay, this is what people are saying they did not like about the idea of having these bonds out there, and so how do we address the negatives? And so their mindset was a bit different. They alluded to their plan, their 12-month plan on getting some ideas out there. So step one was going out there doing the surveys, getting this feedback, getting their core team together. Step two was finding out who in the community could be partners, putting together presentations, going to different town halls to discuss these presentations. Step three was really then figuring out which option you're going to choose. And step four is like pretty hard last 90 days of going out there, pounding on doors and getting the word out there. There's a lot more into it. I took a lot of notes in regards to that presentation, but I thought it was pretty eye-opening.
Absolutely, I think it just really spoke to the concerted effort that was required, and I think that it was really helpful that they had that third-party expert in with the community organizers.
Yeah.
That was really helping identify those opportunities for community outreach, for those, just refining what the plan was, for surveying and identifying which individuals to canvass, and organizing those canvassing efforts as well, so. The value that I took out of that was like the third-party expert really helped drive that process forward
Yeah.
successfully.
I think it was, so the architect was very crucial to that process, and then this individual out there that was sort of the marketing piece, the person kind of, the Band-Aid bringing all the people together, the community experts, the board, the administration, and the architect, and them all working together to get the right messaging out, really put them on this really good, kept them on this great process of informing the public, consistency, addressing concerns consistently, and getting it to a place where it ultimately got approved. So the thing I really took away from this is that after they got through all the surveys and the fact-finding mission, and they came down to presenting these things to the public, and they had these 7 different options on there, options ranging anywhere from like a $19 million fix all the way to like a $120 million brand new build. They ended up choosing the one just under that at 70 million to get like everything except for a new build done, and that was the public choosing that at the end of this whole thing after going through this educational process, and I thought that was pretty fascinating. Second one that I was a part of, and I will circle back to Dr. Enright on this, it was using AI for growth in your organization and closing gaps. And when they say growth, it's the school system as a whole in growing academic success and things of that nature, but also a very specific part of this was how can you close the gaps with the IEP process for those that have an IEP. And you know, basically they hired an expert out there that was able to generate an AI platform that saw state data and then maybe map data, other information already that we could use here that would consistently feed these tables to highlight growth. And it was so cool to me as somewhat of a data nerd that they could drill down to, okay, you got people that are on the basketball team, just choose the basketball students and how are they doing with grades during the basketball season, and it can kind of track all the data. And so I'm not saying you have to get that granular, but what this did was it highlighted areas for that particular district to focus on where they needed to focus on growth, using raw data and how grades came back and things of that nature. So very fascinating to me. I don't know if anybody else that took that particular course, but had a great time down there. And what were some of the observations that you had from the other things that you were part of?
Can I build off that one?
Sure.
Now that you're talking about AI, because that links to another seminar that I went to. There was a legislative update that was co-hosted by a state congressperson, state senator, and then Tony Sanders. They were talking about there's an AI plan that ISB's gonna, the guidance is gonna be released in summer of 2026. So I thought that was great to go along with their numeracy and literacy plan that's already been released.
Yeah, it's definitely something we need. From the state, we need guidance on the AI. You know, I think a lot of us are using it right now in different ways, but certainly really harnessing it to go into that deep research is going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's what it was. It was Bradley that had the high school, it was Troy that had the AI program instituted in their school district. That's why Troy was on top of mind. And so, might be worth figuring out, or reaching out to see what they did with the information, but very insightful.
So yeah, so that was a really cool update from ISB. Exciting to hear that that's gonna be coming in summer of 2026. They also updated a couple of other things. The mental health screening bill goes into effect in 2027. So, and they were just talking about funding and budget.
Yeah.
How to balance that.
Trying to find out, I think they're asking a little under $1 billion in additional dollars, they just don't have this year. There's been a lot of money added into the evidence-based funding, and it's a wonderful program. You know, I think arguments from district like ours is that it would be nice to also have other metrics, so evidence-based funding, you're getting some if you're a school district that has significant, you know, structural needs in a school or things like that. You know, that the system is good, but we'd like to see it expanded so more of us are eligible for it.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is gonna happen, but.
Is that something that we would reach out to our state legislators
Yeah,
about then?
there's a growing group of superintendents and administrators in districts like ours where we get zero, not zero, but we get very little for evidence-based funding. But you have a school that's 78 years old and another one that's 60 years old, and you just can't get the money to keep up with the things that are failing. And so I think eventually you're gonna see some things change, or some more accountability come to, if they are giving you the money, then accountability for showing performance or something for it. But there's also the chance the state could just cut it completely, with a tighter budget, so.
Yeah, the two legislators that were there were really pro-education and trying to
Yeah.
advocate for more funding
Mhm.
availability, but just recognizing that there's a limited number of
Right.
taxing
Right.
revenues that you can
Yeah,
pull from.
and it seems like if you look at it, because we're looking at a possibility of a 1% sales tax throughout the county eventually. You know, you go to that, but eventually, right, there's only so many 1% that you can put on different taxes. So
Yeah.
hopefully the state will someday come up with a funding system that's a little bit better maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Well, I can speak to the sessions I went to. One of them, I mean, I was part of the delegate assembly, of course. All of the constitutional amendments passed. They tried to pass it as a consent agenda, and then different schools spoke out about pulling things off of the consent agenda, and we had discussions. So it was a very lengthy delegate assembly. It was 2 full hours. Yeah, it was a lot. But I do have all of the final tallies, if anyone's interested. The school bus funding also passed. Let's see, that one passed 344 to 10.
Wow,
So,
Wow.
yeah,
So it was
to
close.
do adopt. And, yeah, it was very interesting. I do have the report if anyone is interested in looking at it afterwards. We did all sorts of exciting things. But then the sessions that I attended, one I kind of talked to Katie about, in light of the mental health screening. It truly takes a village, and it was about, Daybreak Health is the service provider that was there speaking with members of the Crystal Lake School District, and just how they utilize this provider to kind of supplement the services that are given to students in their district. It really takes the pressure off of the social workers in the district. It allows for parents to make referrals as well, if they see that their child is maybe holding it together at school, but they're having issues at home. It was really interesting. They did run some numbers. After 3 years of utilizing the service, they found on average 12 more days of school were attended for those children that were missing quite a lot of school, and there were 50% fewer discipline referrals.
I can see that.
They're short-term counselors. They're like 12 to 24 weeks. They're not meant to be long-term. But they were just saying, like, it really was able to alleviate some of the burden on the school for providing those resources for students who maybe just needed a little additional support for a short-term need. So that was really, really helpful. They did talk about maybe some grant funding for that. They do bill through private insurance and Medicaid whenever possible.
Are the Daybreak professionals working in the context of the school, or is that something happening outside of the school, did they say?
So there were different plans based on the age of the student. For the younger students, some of the counseling sessions were with the parents. And their schedules were wide open, so they would even do like telehealth in the evenings with the parents and the counselor. Yeah, and then for the older students, some of those were taking place during the school day in the facility. Yeah, it was kind of interesting just to hear how it all worked. Yeah. They were able to also, remove a limit on referrals for the service, so that was nice. And it didn't feel like you only have 1,000 sessions or something, so people were like holding on to them. It was unlimited, so, anyone that was referred got the service.
Do you know if that was the high school or elementary
It's the
district? Elementary district.
Yeah, it was great. And then I went to another session that was, it was called A Year of Shared Services for Safer Schools. So it was 2 neighboring districts that both had a need for a director of safety and security, but weren't sure if that was a full-time role or not. So they entered into an IGA, hired this full-time person who came in. He had a law enforcement background, so he was able to really make connections with those different agencies. That was really interesting, that it was a shared service.
Yeah.
And they talked about how just when the teachers felt safer in the facility and they felt supported by this director of safety and security, that they worked better in the classrooms. Then when the parents felt better, you know, and the students' grades kind of picked up because there were less behavioral issues. And the safety it extended beyond just the physical buildings. It wasn't just about like cameras and, you know, ID checks and, you know, door locks and things. It was also about digital safety, and those sort of things. So I thought that was they did determine after a year that it was definitely, they each needed to have a full-time person.
Sure.
But by then, and they did communicate the heck out of it, to push, this is why we need this person. And then that just made the whole school community really support them in this vision. But it was 2 different school districts. I think it was Arlington Heights.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so there was like a lot of different like police agencies that they had to kind of like touch base with because there's so many different communities in those districts. Yeah, so that was kind of cool. I liked that. And then on Sunday, I attended the roundtable. It was the rural and small school topics with AIRS. Are we members? Like, do we pay dues to AIRS? Do you know? The Association of Illinois Rural and Small Schools. So I looked up, like, they said, are you a rural and small school? There's like a QR code, and I looked us up, and RV was listed, but
RV
not Nipperson.
Yeah, because if you have over 1,000 students,
Mhm.
you are considered a small school, so
I
that's,
did ask,
yeah.
and they said we are rural adjacent, so.
So
So we
RV
qualify.
actually gets a sizable grant
Yeah,
every year, but we can't get it unless we go under 1,000 for D2.
well, he
So
said.
what
if
you're
you
saying is
think-
we need a 3rd school district?
Yes, yes,
He said, if you think you're rural, you're rural.
yeah.
Well, then we should be able to get the grant if we think
Yeah.
we're
Yeah, that's right.
So it was kind of interesting, like, just to be a member of their group. I mean, it was kind of fascinating. There are 489 rural districts in the state, and that makes up 57% of all the districts
Yeah.
in the state.
That
Like,
is a surprise.
it's a huge block, so
Yeah.
you're talking about like legislatively, like
Yeah.
working together, they're really trying to like get all of these rural and small schools
Right.
to work as a team because there's so much more strength in numbers.
Yeah.
So they did say like, it's $400 to join for the year for the association, and they were like, your best bet is to get a bank to sponsor you.
Yeah.
Because that makes them a friend of rural schools for $500, and then they can put something in their window. They were like, oh yeah, it was fun. But yeah, they had these like pennants, like just, yeah, rural schools, we're here. So it was interesting just talking about all the issues that everyone's facing. I mean, crumbling infrastructure, you know, teacher retention, finding school bus drivers, all of it, like everyone's going through the same stuff.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Yes, sir.
So the high school,
Yeah, it's rural.
they're rural,
Yeah.
we are not.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make
We were
sure.
on the spreadsheet, so I assure you, he looked us
Was
up.
it 40,000?
So RV actually gets about $55,000
You get a grant for 55,000.
because they're under the 1,000.
Yeah,
Population.
Even though we are considered rural for Nippersink, you also have to be under the
1,000.
1,000 enrollment.
yeah.
So what is our grade school district?
1150.
Well, we were on the sheet, so he said we were part of
And
them.
we are part of it, but we
That
don't
should be
get-
split with
We
us.
don't get the
We just
grant.
don't get the grant.
At least 60/40.
It should be 60/40, 60/40.
Yeah.
Can we watch the 8th grade?
That is- Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get the 8th grade into high school. Hey,
There you go.
yeah.
We're gonna put him over there maybe for a year. Yeah, so that was,
frustrating.
I was like, is it just that our dots are on top of each other on the map?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was, I thought it was great, as usual, lots of really good information, lots of really great people, yeah. So,
Well, they can use the 55,000. So, that's good. That sounds, yeah, I mean, that sounds, like a pretty cool organization that can go out there and help support the rural communities and make some more awareness, providing them. And if they get recognized, the state can provide grants to them too, so that's terrific.
yeah, they were all talking about the 1% sales tax too, and some
Yeah.
of them are so rural that they're like, well, 1%, who's spending it?
Yeah,
Like,
some-
where's
some of the
that
counties
even coming from?
Central,
Yeah.
southern Illinois, it's not gonna help them
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any others?
Well, it was my first time down there, and I thought it was great. It was, when the day flies by and you're taking in all this information, it's just, it means a lot. And my favorite seminar was Creative Solutions for Rural School Facility Improvements. And, talking about that sales tax potential. This particular district, which was a small unit district out by Peoria, they talked about, how they had that pass in their area. They didn't get the full percent, they got 0.5%. But it equated to $30,000 a month in additional revenue. And it was a game changer for them, and that they use that to issue working cash bonds and do a whole bunch of facility improvements. So definitely, there's major potential there with that, that sales tax. They also talked about a lot of just opportunities that are available to school districts for free energy assessments and resources that I can, bring back to the Buildings and Grounds Committee and work with Chris on. They talked about master facility planning. So, we're talking about the HLS bonds and doing this major work, and then like we talk about that additional work and how to schedule that and do that effectively. Health, life, safety, one of the key options there was the change in the law and the ability to do that. Everybody was really taking note of that. So just some really great things. They even talked about some things with technology and how, with the evolving technology, looking at leases versus purchasing to save money overall because of the phase out or the obsolescence of that type of equipment. So just a lot of different options. They talked about school bus fleets and the efficiencies there. And, so just a lot of different, options that are available for cost savings, and took a lot of notes, and like I say, I'll be able to bring a lot of that stuff to discussion at Buildings and Grounds and some other things, transportation. But I found the whole conference extremely valuable. And like I say, it was my first time down, and I'm looking forward to going again.
Great. Thanks.
All right, so it was my second time down, and I was telling Dr. Lynn earlier, I think it was the busiest one. I think because the weather was so great. It's why everyone was down in Chicago that weekend for the parade and tree lighting. And I would say the session I went to that I liked the most was social media in a school district, and it was the communication director for Maine Township School, I believe. He said it was right around O'Hare, and then 2 lawyers, and the big thing was how it can affect people's freedom of speech. So when you've got a lot of communication and going out from the school district, you know, do you want to have comments turned on or turned off? Can you turn them on or off for certain posts? They went through different case studies with schools and universities, and when it would start interfering with people's freedom of speech, and different cases that were proved that way. And then they talked about our responsibility as a board member, what we're posting even on our own social media. You know, what hat are you wearing? Are you the board member, or is it your personal? And even if it's your personal opinion, even if you're not stating that, you know, your opinions are separate from the board or all that, you know, you've got to be very clear, and even on your own social media pages and things like that, you know. And especially they were talking about the board president having extra responsibilities because you're considered the spokesperson already for the board, you know. And so it's really interesting, and it's interesting hearing what the communication director at Maine Township, how he handled things. He said they just like to have the least amount of social media as possible. Like, they don't use Twitter at all. I think it's called X now.
Yeah.
And it's because of some of the things in place. I think they allow nudity and other content that they don't want to be associated with. So they don't want to have any accounts associated with Twitter and X at all. The way they run it is they don't turn on any commenting, but under the header of all their social media pages, they put a way of getting in contact with the school district, because then they said you take away some of the back and forth comments too, where people can sit easily at their computer and go back and forth, and it might be off topic for what you're posting about and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how they handled it, and I thought it was informative as a board member, you know, think about what you should be responsible for as well. It was just good, an overall good experience too.
Good. Yeah, huge topic, right? That's why I only stick to posting about the Bears. I get
Yeah,
so much flack for even that, so.
that's enough.
That's enough, that's exactly right. Anything else? Okay. Thanks for all your updates in regards to the conference. Like I said, my first time, I was really blown away by the presenters, topics that they covered. I thought it was time really well spent down there. That moves us on to any closed session. Do we have anything to discuss in closed session? No? Okay. So then no motion needed to enter into closed session. We'll move directly into adjournment, and need a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. This meeting has been adjourned. Thank you. Yeah.
Annual report.
No.
You have to take it. All right, very good. Oh, what now?
There's just two things.